You will often, in spiritual circles, come across allusions to the number 4, 5, and 6. Often today, these would be called 4D, 5D, and 6D. These are alluding to a density of consciousness as individuals start off after their adolescence years with a very, very heavy, burdensome approach to awareness. And it's loaded with the great weights of competition. And as an individual ascends beyond the primitive indoctrinations that happened in our world's consciousness, mainstream consciousness, they grow from a consciousness of service to self to a greater comfortability and intimacy with ideals of service to all. In fact, the entire construct of polarity, what in ancient books they refer to as the light versus the dark, but I don't call it the dark, I just call it the void, is all premised on a description of the degree to which there is a dedication towards an awareness of the interconnectedness of one's action to the entire construct and a service to that oneness, to the all, to the totality, versus radical intelligence, radical players that wish to rather exploit the system through fear or intimidation or seduction to compel other agents to lend them their freedom and their energy, their light, their truth. And those agents are called service to self. 4D consciousness is an individual who is passively creating their life's experience. They're in a state of reactivity. They are very much tapped into the evolutionary biological construct that runs through the consciousness of their body, which is based on constructs of fight and flight. These involve detecting threats and choosing whether to engage in struggle or to avoid that threat. A typical individual who's not in a spiritually dynamic space is reacting to the body's system of detecting threats and challenges and choosing whether to struggle, to conquer, or to flee and avoid threat. The body has this consciousness in order to sustain its species, or to sustain the organism, but it is the abstract cognitive capacities of the mind that begin to become activated in women about the age of 12, men about the age of 13, and continue to grow till the age of 22, 23. These abstract cognitive capacities that theoreticians like Piaget dedicated their life's work to explaining the abstract mind, and those capacities that become increasingly available within the human condition. Those abstract capacities are the very conduit through which an individual can envision an intimate connection and draw forth intimate action with the unknown, with the divine. It can also be used to create schemas, narratives, to help justify a person's biological predisposition towards sustainability and survival. Individual will find that if they go to a prison's death row and they interview individuals that have brought forth great tragedy in this world, each of them, unless they're a sociopath, each of them will have a justification of survival. This was an expression of my survival. In fact, the body consciousness is designed to help you survive as a species, but when the abstract cognitive capacities begin to connect with that consciousness, then the individual will create narratives where everything is a struggle of survival, whether it's over a parking space or waiting online. And in this way, we say that most individuals are spiritually in slumber. They are not awake. They're just in a state of reactivity. They are not bringing forth the cause, but they are the reactionary effect. And in such a state, when they are not governing their own sovereignty, then they are susceptible to whatever winds of consciousness come across their plane. Very, very, very few of these individuals are even aware why on a particular day they feel a certain way, and why something that was an issue yesterday is an issue the next day. But they're simply just trying to survive the best way they know. So, individuals who are not spiritually active are called to be swimming within the flurry of 4D consciousness, fourth density consciousness. They are confronting bumps on the road that are designed to help awaken them to something greater than beyond the body's verve for survival. And everything they experience is specifically designed to either entrench them further in a passive default position, these are usually service to self energies that will benefit from an individual's passivity, as an individual is actually an angel incarnate in physical form, an aspect of the Creator. And the intention of the individual, the pure light of an individual's intention, has a strong effect on the reality a person helps to co-create in their surroundings. And so, for free radical energy wishes for a person to be in a state of constant need, want, and dissatisfaction, so that the individual will lend its will to the chord of that energy that's partnered with that individual in that path. As that energy has a heightened ability to be to set the table in the world of actuality, which it doesn't have access to without the individual. So it wishes to stream the musics of need and want and fear within a person's circle. On the other hand, there's another side to this, intelligence, inspiration, that comes from another space, comes from a space of collaboration, an ascended path of harmony. And these intelligences, they work together with an individual's future self. So as all individuals will eventually achieve greatest clarity. And these aspects of the future self, they pair with like energy to help create birth pangs, awaken a person to the idea that their construct is incomplete, to humble them, to reassess their journey, reassess the way they see their reality. Like a princess who's asleep in a carriage and being driven randomly across the countryside. Each bump on the road is there to awaken them, to seize the reins, and take control. And individuals become aware of their limitations because every individual is created perfectly imperfect. When an individual comes to peace with their imperfection, is grateful for their imperfection, has an invitation to explore, collaborate with the rest of the lights and expressions of the Almighty, to imbue their surroundings. The individual begins to slowly awaken to becoming a spiritually sovereign individual in this state I would call spiritually dynamic. This is an individual that can begin to utilize the focus of their intention, their heart's aspiration, take an active part in creating the journey that lies ahead of them. This individual will then start to awaken, shed a lot of the fetishes of their culture, society. They'll awaken to realize that I was brought up on the notion of competition, but truly no two individuals are ever the same. The idea of competition is a big soap opera. And they will focus on the individual music that thrives within their soul and focus on how they can use that music to instill a higher grace, not just for themselves, but for all of creation. In that space, an individual crosses the threshold of 4D and enters into 5D consciousness, which is an expression of service to all. An individual who enters 5D consciousness is not necessarily devoid of ego. So many individuals believe that they have to become completely, have to nullify the self completely. It's not always the case. You can state that within the Eastern traditions, there's this idea that one has to nullify the self. And as they nullify themselves, then they begin to associate themselves with the light that's within their soul. And as they begin to recognize that light, they will begin to recognize that light resonating within all of creation. and their energy, their will, their predisposition for survival and thriving, then be channeled for the light that's within all things. That's called feminine approach to humility and ego. And you will notice that it's not a coincidence that within societies where this is naturally embraced within the culture, those societies are very much, they have either communist or socialistic ideals in their society. Even if they're not channeling these energies in a spiritual way, these energies are getting expressed in their politics, in the fabric of their ideology and culture, whereby individual rights are not as important as the collective rights, or individual ownership is not as important as the state's ownership, totality, the nullification of self. To the degree that these energies are not embraced and uplifted to a spiritual tier, they still get expressed within a linear way. There is another path to humility of the ego. That is when an individual embraces all of the specific truth, the specific core, the specific energy that they were granted, that's unique, that no two are alike, that specific passion, that they embrace it to the fullest. When they tune out all that's external except for their natural birthright as an expression of the divine that has been imparted into them, and they will feel a heightened sense of passion. And they will feel that time slows down as they do their actions. They will feel they are inhabiting a space of flow, and they will feel that there's continuity in their days. And in that space, should they raise their intention to channel that chord, that expression, that accent, as an expression of serving the music, the light that resonates all around them, rather than to simply serve self, the individual as well will invert the ego. As they will revere the accent of truth that is within them, and therefore revere the splinters of truth that are broadcasting in the eyes of each individual they grace. That's called a masculine approach to humility, subjugating the ego. But the masculine approach is truly full embrace of the ego, and then dedicating that ego for a higher ideal. And so it is the inverse of the feminine. And when that approach is not expressed as an outlet to the ethereal, then it will manifest in societies that value libertarianism and capitalism, where societies value first individual pursuit of happiness over the collective, Either path is right or wrong. Of course, we need both masculine and feminine energies to complement each other to become whole. But within a state of 5D, an individual is embracing the crux of all that they've been awarded and is channeling it for a higher purpose, to raise themselves through their connectivity of a devotion for all. And as one reaches the threshold of that level of consciousness, there is something called 6D. Within 6D, an individual has become so immersed within their dedication to all, they no longer can witness themselves as specifically their individual chord, but they witness their individual chord vibrating in a cohesion, in a harmony with the rest of the system of all the chords of creation. And so in that space, they can no longer see where they start and divinity ends. There is no clear distinction between them as an individual and them as an expression of the light of God. As they pass through that threshold, they enter into 6D. They'll be invited to take upon themselves actively challenges that are affecting the collective consciousness, that are affecting others, and to help work through, in their linear way, those knots. So as they teach those knots the solutions within their linear life, they can see the collective consciousness with those solutions. And the knots that have bound will be loosened, and more harmonic pathways will become evident through the collective consciousness for the majority of individuals that are in 4D, that are not sovereignly awakened, and that are making their decisions based on the effects of some other cause. And so gradually, those that are not awake will increasingly come closer to an awakened state, because those knots have been untied. Within the 4th D consciousness, an individual will repeatedly be visited by aspects of themselves that they have left behind. Aspects of their personality, of their self, whether from childhood or adolescence or such, will taunt them. Will say you're not good enough. Will say you're alone in what you're doing. You have been deserted. Will say you don't have the ability to meet the mandate of imbuing your life with meaning. And they say these things because these aspects of self were impressed, it was impressed upon them, this language, from the individual themselves. At a certain space, at a certain time in their life, they made the decision that this aspect of my soul's expression is not uniform with the trajectory of life that I envision for myself, and I will subjugate and subdue this aspect of self and leave it buried behind. And so from that point of that impression, those aspects of self will always be there below the surface, echoing the language that was imparted to them, the language you taught them. And so an individual in 4D will consistently find themselves brought to points of humility, where they will be visited by the ghosts of self past, where they'll be humbled, and they'll be invited to teach again, to teach a new language, to restore the music that was imparted, the music of dominion, the music of hostility, the music of negativity, and instead seed the music of harmony and healing, continuity and reunion. As an individual restores the aspects of self one by one that visit them on their journey, and this could take a spiritually dynamic individual, this could take them a few months. An individual who's passively creating their journey take them many, many years if they manage to fulfill it. As they do this, they begin a process that I call connecting the dots. They're able to connect the various dots of their soul that they've left behind. By connecting the dots, they're able to recognize, like a child that connects the dots in order to create a picture. They're able to connect the dots and get a greater picture, a greater focal point, a greater essence of their soul's theme. And in recognizing that theme, they're able to uncover their sacred song of truth, their birthright. For it's from that song that their ability to reach a heightened state of energy as a creator, this space of great manifestation. It's a space where one can choose sovereignly in freedom and can completely shift the trajectory of their journey from that space. And so the individual from that space, as they graduate from 4th D to 5D, because they cannot enter 5D without having a full knowledge of self. Many spiritual luminaries have imparted, love thy brother as you love thyself. But you cannot love what is within your brother if you cannot love, or you do not know what it is that is sacred within yourself. And so the threshold you must pass is to know thyself. And in knowing thyself, we are talking about knowing one's complete self. And as one knows and reclaims their complete self, one then is in a space of equilibrium to choose whether to be a series of effects or to galvanize a cause from a space of 0 point, from the eye of the hurricane. And when they choose to engage that, they cross over to a threshold of 5D. And when they cross over that threshold to 5D, and they choose to take the fullness of themselves to be a conduit, a pipe of the light of eternity that flows within them, their cognizance of how it flows from them through the collective grid, through to all, and how all are interconnected. And as if one wants to change their world, one merely needs to change themselves. As there are multitudes of individuals who are in 4D and are not active participants in their journey. They're just reacting to what is filtering through them. And these individuals are simply dancing to the music that's playing in the collective consciousness. When an individual enters into 5D, this is an individual that can, with increasing intensity and speed, filter the light of eternity that's being channeled through their special chord of creation, filter it back into the collective consciousness to plant the seeds for a greater awareness, for a greater harmony, for shifts in what is the norm to take root in a dramatic way. And so the individual in 5D recognizes in a very real way that to change the world, I focus on changing myself. Ram, Ram, Sita Ram.